Good morning, all. Call the meeting to order. Just for clarification, in the chambers here, if you can remove cover, please, when you're in here. Thank you very much. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, just please remove cover in the chambers if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, just a hat. Thanks very much. Okay, so first thing on the agenda is the agenda.
I'll move it.
Okay. Michelle moves the agenda for today's meeting. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, next up for discussion is the January 9th meeting minutes. Any discussion or conversation or motions? Dan moves approval of the January 9th, 2024 meeting minutes. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so first up for consideration this morning is the development application 23198, dog training facility. Let me guess, it's those people. So if there's somebody here that's representing the application, would you please come up and take one of the chairs up front, or two, or three, or... Okay, can you please introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, my name's Jamie Billings. Been a dog trainer for 21 years, ex-veteran. I'm a retired veteran that was diagnosed with severe PTSD. I got into dogs about 20 years ago. I moved here 4 years ago and found that the community required help. I'm currently training 40 dogs. I've trained 11 trainers to assist me in this. And we've got it down to a price that people that really need a dog can afford it. These dogs are anywhere from $35,000 to $45,000, and we've got the price way down, like under $5,000 over a 2-year period. So we're a nonprofit organization. We were able to find a place that we can use for the discipline training of the dogs, because there's only ever 4 dogs there at once. They go through a 25-week discipline program. Then they have to pass a few tests to come into the public, and then they come into the public.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, but can we just read the application first?
By all
and then
means.
we can go into your, we're interested to hear what you have to say, but so everybody's on board with what we're talking about. So, Aaron, could you please go ahead with development application 2402?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application, as mentioned, is for a dog training facility located at 6511 Old Trans-Canada Highway. The applicant is requesting approval from the Municipal Planning Commission for an indoor dog training facility, including the placement of an identification sign on the proposed building. And there's also an existing storage container that was noted on the site that can be included with the permit as well. Pause for resiliency, trains dogs for obedience, therapy, and service purposes. And they'll be doing that within an existing shop building. The proposed hours of operation of the facility will be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. 2 sessions are proposed per day with 4 dogs and 2 trainers per session. The applicant is proposing, as I said, up to 4 dogs at a time on the site. No dogs will be boarded overnight. A shop and residence are located to the west of the site, and the landowner has provided a letter of support stating that this use will not have any negative impacts on their property. Home-based businesses under the land use bylaw must be operated by the occupants of a dwelling on the site. Therefore, the proposed use is best classified as other use under the Country Residential 2 district in the land use bylaw. Also, dog training is not defined as a specific use in the Country Residential district, which is why we're taking this to MPC as a other use. There's a sign affixed to the fence next to the shop. The sign is used for identification purposes, and this sign is included as part of the development permit. In the land use bylaw, under the Country Residential District 2, other use is a Class 2 discretionary, as I mentioned before, requiring MPC approval. The property is located with the Urban Reserve Red Cliff area shown in the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan. The proposed use meets the intent of the Tri-Area IDP since it's proposing to use an existing building for the proposed dog training facility, and no additional buildings or subdivision on the site are proposed. The other uses category means that uses are consistent with the definition or general purpose of the applicable land use district as approved by the Development Authority. The general purpose and intent of the CR2 district is to provide for low-density residential development and limited agricultural pursuits in the county. The proposed use is aligned with the definition and intent of the CR2 district since the overall use of the site will remain primarily residential. The number of dogs temporarily attending the site and having the dog training being done indoors will not cause any appreciable impacts, if any, to adjacent properties. This also ensures compliance with Section 11.13, keeping of animals in the land use bylaw. A sign was observed at the site about 2 feet by 4 feet on the fence, and it's not very visible from the highway, and the sign will not impact the overall residential use of the site. As part of the application review process, we circulated the application to Alberta Transportation in the town of Red Cliff. Alberta Transportation did not have any objections to having this use located on this site, and the town of Red Cliff did not have any comments. And the recommended motion, we're recommending approval of this development permit. Conditions 1 through 5 are typical standard conditions for this type of use, and conditions that apply to this use would be a separate permit's needed if additional signs are proposed to go up. The applicant shall comply with the responsible dog ownership bylaw. The hours of operation are approved as 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, subject to no more than 3 off-site employees, volunteers attending the site at each training session, and 4 dogs at each session. Any additional sessions, employees, volunteers, or dogs will require prior approval from the Development Authority. And finally, this permit will be subject to annual review. That concludes my presentation. Oh, we have some photos. Okay, so this is a photo looking south of the building that the dog training will take place in, and that's the sign that I mentioned. And this is looking east at an existing residence. And then we're looking north towards the Trans-Canada Highway, old Trans-Canada Highway and the highway. And we're looking south at the shop where the training will take place. And this shows the area where there can be parking. And the site is quite large, so it's a lot of parking space available. And then the next photo again shows the parking area. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, Mr. Billings, would you like to continue on with your discussion,
So
please?
basically, when I moved here, again, there was a lot of people needed dogs but couldn't afford the dogs. And what I was hearing, to me, was criminal, like $12,000, $15,000 to help train a dog. Who can afford that? So we came up with a company, Pause for Resiliency. Mr. John Wheelwright, who is he's the service dog coordinator for the government out of Edmonton. He knows who I am. We are a recognized training. We have $6 million liability insurance. We are an incorporated company, nonprofit, and we're just trying to keep the price down for the people that needs the dogs.
Okay. Do you currently reside there, Mr. Billings?
No, I reside in Red Cliff.
Okay. So who lives at the site?
Gentleman lives here, Corey, I don't even know his last name. He offered the shop to us out of good heart. And the garage is twice as long as you see in the picture. And like I say, we're able to do 4 dogs in there, no problem, and it's heated. And he's just helping us out, actually wants his dog trained, so.
Okay. All right, good. Okay, I open the floor to discussion. Go ahead, Michelle.
I don't have any discussion, but I will move this because I think it's a great idea.
I agree. Okay, so, one more question. Go ahead, Dan.
Not to do with the application, but did you mention a CCAN that you want to put on this, or in addition to this?
That is correct. We can include a CCAN that I observed on the site with this application. That way it'll be permitted. Thank you.
But is that CCAN part of your business? No, it's not yours?
No,
Okay,
sir.
so that wouldn't be,
It's not associated with this use. It's associated with the property.
so is that not up to the property owner to come in and get that permit?
Well, I think we can add it to this permit. That would save some paperwork and some time for the landowner. Thank you.
Well, no, because it says it's a month-to-month lease here for these guys, correct?
Correct.
Corey Atchison is the applicant.
Oh, he is, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's leasing the facility to these guys. I guess if he's the applicant, we can add that on, if you're good with that, Michelle.
Okay, so Michelle moves approval of development application 23/198 with the CCAN included. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permit has been approved subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed today. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there is now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within the 21-day period, the permit will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you can discuss them with the development officer after today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing the dogs in. It was a treat to see.
I'll be in contact, Aaron.
Thank you. Wait, sorry.
There's a joke there somewhere, I just don't know what. Probably better to shut up. Okay.
Leave that one alone. No freezers involved.
Here we go again. I'm never going to live that down. Yeah. Anyways, now that we have the dogs out, I would like to move on to a development application 2402. Is there a representative here for that application? Okay, sir, can you take one of the chairs up front, please? So when requested to speak, there's a little button there on the, that you can push to speak. Okay, so this is development application 24/02. Aaron, take it away, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposal is for an existing storage container again and a shop with the side yard relaxation. The subject site is located at number 6-12520 Range Road 70. The applicant is requesting approval from MPC to construct a 1,944 square foot, 180 square meter shop with proposed east side yard setback of about 17 feet, 5.18 meters. Section 6.22 of the land use bylaw states a 44 foot, 13.5 meters side yard setback should be required for an accessory building of this size. The proposal results in a setback relaxation request of 27 feet, about 8.3 meters from the east side yard property line. An existing storage container which meets the setback requirements is located to the north of the proposed shop. The proposed floor area of the proposed shop is, as I said before, 1,944 square feet, 180 square meters. And that meets the maximum building area of all accessory buildings in the CR2 district. And the total building area of all accessory buildings on the site, including barns, sheds, greenhouses, the storage container, and the proposed shop, is 340.93 square meters. which comes out to 3,669.7 square feet, which is under the maximum allowed under the land use bylaw. And I should also note that there's an existing garage in the site, and that garage will be demolished, and that pad will be used for the new shop. The subject site is located in the northwest portion of the county. The site is zoned Country Residential District 2 in the land use bylaw. The site is surrounded on the northwest and directly east by land zoned as Agriculture District 2. That is, and those lands have an environmental reserve easement designation on them. And the lands to the east of the easement and to the south are also zoned Country Residential 2. In accordance with section 16.6.1 of the land use bylaw, the Development Authority shall review each development application based on its merit and determine its compliance with the bylaw. When a development permit application includes variances, requests, or discretionary uses, the Development Authority shall assess the application as outlined based on the following criteria in accordance with section 640, sub 6 of the MGA. Unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with the effect, use, enjoyment, or value of adjacent parcels of land. The proposed development conforms with the use prescribed for that land or building in the land use bylaw. In reviewing relevant legislation of the land use bylaw, the maximum building area of accessory buildings on this site does meet the land use bylaw. The variance being requested is a side yard variance, as I mentioned before, which would result in a 27-foot, 8.3-meter variance of this requirement. And the reason why the shop cannot be moved over to the east is because the applicant is planning to utilize an existing concrete pad from an existing garage, and building the shop to the west side of the existing pad would impede gate access to the pasture and would require changing the grading and location of the existing access. Also, the lands situated directly to the east are unlikely to be developed with permanent structures due to being encumbered by an environmental reserve easement, and there's also a right-of-way on the adjacent property. So the width of the environmental reserve land between this site and the adjacent CR2 site is about 46 feet, 14 meters. And that effectively increases the separation distance between this proposed shop and the adjacent CR2 lot to the east. And that setback, the separation distance between the proposed shop and the adjacent country residential lot would be about 19.2 meters. So there'd be quite a separation between the proposed shop and the adjacent CR2 lot. As part of the application process, we did circulate this application to Apex Utilities, and they had no objections. So our recommended motion for this permit is approval, and conditions 1 through 6 are standard conditions, and applications that are unique to this application, or the conditions unique to this application, would be condition 7, utility locates, and condition 9, a setback relaxation of 27 feet is approved from the east property line. And we do have an alternate motion. We also have some photos of the site. This is a site plan of the land. And here's photos. We're looking at the garage that'll be demolished, that the shop will be built on top of. And in this photo below, we're looking east, and that's the environmental reserve easement / right-of-way lands that are zoned A2, that are in between the subject site and the adjacent CR2 site. This is looking north. It shows a barn, greenhouse, and a shed located to the north. And this is looking west. The proposed shop location is identified. And that's it for photos. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Mr. Kushner, would you like to speak to your application at this time?
With the approval of Aaron, I don't have any complaints or anything to bring up really, other than possibly that the 380 square meter coverage law that you guys have. I find that most acreages are 5 acres, and I have 6.67, and I'm wondering why in like 2024 we can't do a percentage of your allowment of coverage on your property. It just kind of, I got an extra 1.67 acres on there, and I'm confined still to that 380 square meters of coverage. That's the only thing I have an issue with.
Okay, yeah, that's how our bylaws are written at this time. So, I mean, that's up for discussion, and your input certainly is heard by the councilors, so
Yeah.
I think it'll be taken into consideration when,
The one thing Aaron doesn't have in there is the photo that I had supplied to them of the shop I'd like to build. There is actually a RV parking that's covered on the south side of the building, but I've had to remove that to bring down to that 380 square meters.
okay?
Other than that, yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay with it.
I'll open the floor to discussion from Planning Commission. Go ahead, Nigel.
Just my clarification, to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So, I mean, this proposal doesn't meet the legal setback, but because of the right-of-way and the environmental reserve, in practical terms, it really does. Is that fair?
Through the chair, the proposal, the land use bylaw states you need to have a certain distance between the shop and the property line. That's not met. However, I'm talking about a separation distance between the shop and the next CR2 lot, and due to the ER reserve and the right-of-way on the land in between those two lots, one could think of it as an increased separation distance. It's a rationale for granting a variance, perhaps. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, so Nigel moves approval of development application 2402 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within 21 days, the permit will become valid at that time. If you have anything further any further questions, you can talk to the development officer after today for those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirchner. All right, so next up for consideration is subdivision application 23CY15. Mr. Moreau, I see you hiding back there. Yeah. Okay, you and if anyone else wants to come up, you know the drill. And I would assume you're Mr. Nygaard? Yes. Okay, all right, good. All right, so this is subdivision application 23CY15. Becky, you want to take it away, please?
You bet, thank you. So as you said, subdivision 23CY15. This is an agricultural subdivision located in Ward 7. The owner and applicant is Bruce and Judith Nygaard, and Brian Monroe has applied on their behalf. This is located along Highway 523, approximately 9.7 kilometers west of the City of Medicine Hat boundary. The legal description is Northwest 22, 12-7, west of the 4th. And the proposal is to subdivide a 12-hectare agricultural parcel cut off from the remainder of the agricultural title by a canal right-of-way in order to create a separate title for a family member. This application is intended to subdivide a 12-hectare or 29.6-acre agricultural parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section for the purposes of creating a separate title. The proposed subdivision is dry land pasture and is cut off from the remainder of the agricultural title by a canal right-of-way. The remainder of the agricultural title is 13.9 hectares or 34.3 acres in size. The property is located along Highway 523, adjacent to numerous multi-parcel country residential subdivisions. Both the proposed subdivision and the remainder of the agricultural title gains direct access from Highway 523 from separate existing access approaches. The proposed subdivision area currently contains a residence, 2 barns, and a covered shelter. The remainder of the agricultural title contains an existing residence and yard site. There are no oil or gas wells in proximity to the proposed subdivision, and the proposed subdivision is located outside of the tri-area intermunicipal development plan boundary. Under relevant legislation, the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are to identify their agricultural land and to limit fragmentation and conversion to non-agricultural uses. Under the implementation section of the plan, Section 5, Efficient Use of Land, it states that the land use framework promotes approaches to reduce the amount of land that is taken up by permanent or long-term development by utilizing the minimum amount of land necessary. Section 666 of the Municipal Government Act states that a subdivision authority may require the owner of a parcel of land that is subject of a proposed subdivision to provide reserve. Money in place of municipal reserve is recommended on the subdivided parcel. Part 2.9, Road Access of the Subdivision Regulations of the Municipal Government Act states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority to each lot that is created. Section 4.1.20, Land Use Policies of the Municipal Development Plan, states that the county may support the subdivision of an agricultural parcel that is fragmented by natural or man-made circumstances as long as the subdivided parcel can demonstrate physical and legal access to a public road, conforms to the minimum parcel size requirements in the land use bylaw, and conforms with the county design guidelines and construction standards. And utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the remainder of the agricultural title. When we circulated this application, Cypress County Finances replied that the parcel is subject to the West Side Water Co-op. However, the local improvement was paid out prior to the 2021 tax levy. Planning and Development replied that the proposed agricultural subdivision is resulting from the SMRID's canal right-of-way, causing an involuntary severance from the remainder of the parcel to the north. The proposed subdivision parcel will continue to utilize an existing approved approach from Highway 523 for access. The proposal complies with Section 4.1.20 of the Municipal Development Plan and is consistent with other similar approvals which have been granted in the past. Cypress County Public Works replied that the proposed subdivision currently gains access from an existing joint approach. Therefore, Alberta Transportation approval is required for a residential approach from Highway 523. TELUS Communications replied that they have no concerns with the proposed activities. Fortis Alberta replied that they are the distribution wire service provider for the area and that no easement is required. Apex Utilities replied that they have no objection to the proposed subdivision. They wish to advise that any relocation of existing facilities will be at the expense of the developer, and payment of contributions required for new gas facilities will be the responsibility of the developer. SMRID replied that if the subdivision is approved, the acreage owners are required to enter into a household purpose agreement with SMERD. Westside Water Co-op replied that they are currently supplying drinking water to the residents on the south parcel. Should a new title be created on this portion through the subdivision process, the Nygaards will be required to transfer the service to the new title as the water drop and curb stop is currently located on the south parcel. The City of Medicine Hat Environment, Land and Gas Production Department has reviewed the subdivision application and has the following comments. Surface improvements are not permitted within 100 meters of any City of Medicine Hat wellhead unless the subdivision or landowner applies to and receives approval from the Alberta Energy Regulator and the city for a setback reduction. Any ground disturbances or surface improvements within 30 meters of any City of Medicine Hat gas pipeline or within 100 meters of any gas wells will require a crossing or proximity agreement. And Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors replied that the requirements of Section 18 are not met. The department anticipates minimal impact on the highway from this proposal. Pursuant to Section 20 of the regulation, the department grants approval for the subdivision authority to vary the requirements of Section 18 of the regulation. In addition, the requirements of Section 19 are not met. To ensure future access management requirements are met, a service road is required. Pursuant to Section 20 of the regulation, Transportation and Economic Corridors grants approval for the subdivision authority to vary the requirements of Section 19 of the regulation. Transportation and Economic Corridors has the following additional comments or requirements with respect to this proposal. The department expects that the municipality will mitigate the impacts of traffic generated by developments approved on the local road connections to the highway system pursuant to Policy 7 of the Provincial Land Use Policies and Section 618.4 of the Municipal Government Act. To satisfy Section 19 of the Subdivision and Development Regulation, a 30-meter by 30-meter service road shall be dedicated along the highway frontage as shown on the attached plan. The service road shall be dedicated by plan of survey and clearly delineated on the final survey as service road. Transportation and Economic Corridors accepts no responsibility for the noise impacts or other impacts of highway traffic upon any development or occupants thereof. The subdivision design should include adequate physical features to ensure that the proposed use of land is compatible with the adjacent provincial highway system. Some of these features might, for example, include landscaping and or berming to provide noise attenuation and visual screening from the highway. Implementation of these features is the responsibility of the owner or municipality. Alberta Transportation expects that the municipality will mitigate the cumulative impacts of traffic generated by developments approved on the local road connection to the highway system pursuant to the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan and Section 648 of the Municipal Government Act. The existing access may remain on a temporary basis. All direct highway accesses are to be considered temporary. No compensation shall be payable to the landowner or their assigns or successors when Alberta Transportation removes or relocates the access, or if the highway access is removed and access provided via a municipal road or service road. And finally, the Cypress County Assessor provided a market value assessment rate of $19,145.53 per hectare for money in place of municipal reserve purposes. So that takes me to my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, and that is approval, subject to the following conditions. Number one, the developer is required to make a payment to the county for money in place of municipal reserve for 12 hectares at a rate of $1,914.55 per hectare, being 10% of the appraised market value of $19,145.53 per hectare. The payment is to be submitted to the county prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number two, the developer is required to provide a 30-meter by 30-meter service road right-of-way along the highway frontage at the southwest corner of the subdivided parcel. The right-of-way is to be registered at the time of the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number three, it is the developer's responsibility to enter into any necessary agreements with the Westside Water Co-op for the supply of water to the proposed subdivision or the remnant parcel. The developer will be required to provide written evidence that the requirements of Westside Water Co-op have been satisfied prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number four, it is the developer's responsibility to enter into any necessary agreements with the SMRID for the supply of water to the proposed subdivision. The developer will be required to provide written evidence that the requirements of SMRID have been satisfied prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And finally, number five, our standard condition, the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements which are to be registered as a requirement for any affected utilities to Cypress County prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And that is my report.
Thank you. Well done. Mr. Nygaard or Mr. Monroe, would you like to speak to the application? Nothing? Ready for questions. Okay. I have a question, first of all. When this house was developed, was there an application for an access road at that southwest corner of the property at that time?
They just told us to use the existing temporary access there, so.
Right. If I remember correctly, it's a while back. Just for everybody else on Planning Commission, do you recall that specifically?
Yeah, as part of the development application for the house, was circulated to Alberta Transportation, which stated that the existing access approach could be used on a temporary basis.
Okay. So the 30 by 30 is not drawn on this diagram, correct? 30 by 30 access portion.
That's right, it'll be included on the tentative plan of survey that Brian will submit to us.
And for clarity, for the planning commission, that's in the southwest corner there, adjacent to that, kind of adjacent to the other yard site there? Yeah.
So there's an existing access approach that's kind of joint in here, and they draw a 30 by 30 meter square right on that corner.
Has that canal right away been pipelined, or is it staying open? Is it drainage? Is it a drainage canal or not? It's not a.
It's drainage, yeah.
Okay. Any other discussions? Okay. Lloyd moves approval of subdivision application 23 CY 15 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So your subdivision has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You are advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the subdivided area surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision's approval date to have met all of the approval conditions and to have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles by your surveyor for the registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you may contact the planner after today's meeting to discuss them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is development application 24/08. Aaron, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposal is for an equipment storage yard with variances in Ward 9, located at 9316 Township Road 194. The applicant is requesting approval from MPC to use a site located at 9316 Township Road 194 as for existing equipment storage. The existing industrial building in the site was approved by MPC back in 2003. The equipment that is proposed to be stored in the site consists of frac water tanks, which are used in the oil and gas industry and are transported to and from the site by semi-tractor. The zoning of the site, of the subject site, is industrial district. Heavy truck and equipment storage is a permitted use in this district. However, there are proposed variances to the side and rear setbacks, and those are greater than the 10% that can be approved by the development officer. And that's the reason why this is going forward to MPC. As per the site plan, access to the site is from Township Road 194. And if we look at the submitted photos, the frac water tanks, they look like sea cans, but they're not. They're actually water tanks. And these tanks will frequently come and go from the site and are not permanent structures. In accordance with section 16.61 of the land use bylaw, the development authority, MPC, can grant a variance if it can be shown that the amenities of the neighborhood or the proposed use will not affect the use, enjoyment, or value of adjacent parcels. and the proposed development conforms with the use prescribed for that land or building in the land use bylaw. With the land use bylaw review under the industrial district, heavy truck and equipment storage is a permitted use. However, there's variances that require us to take this permit to Municipal Planning Commission. The biggest issue would be to maintain a 40-meter front setback from the center line of Township Road 194. Maintaining the front setback of 40 meters from the center line will ensure that visibility along the Township Road is not impacted and will reduce the possibility of issues such as snow drifting. So the development officer recommends approval of the variances, the 20-foot, 6-meter side yard variance and the rear setback variance or the applicant is proposing a 5-foot, 1.5-meter variance for the west and rear setbacks. According to the submitted letter of intent, the site is sloped, which limits where the trailers can be parked in the site when not in use. So on the east side of the lot, the lot slopes down, and that would limit where the trailers or the water tanks can be parked. It should also be noted that the land surrounding the subject site is undeveloped, and the closest residences are located 2,500 meters, about 8,200 feet to the southwest, and approximately 1,000 meters, 3,280 feet to the southeast. The application has been circulated to Public Works, and Public Works notes that the front setback has been addressed, so it's now 40 meters from the center line of the Township Road. Alberta Transportation provided comments and will not cause any concern for ongoing highway operation or future highway expansion. And this proposal is exempt from the permit requirements from Alberta Transportation. The application was also circulated to TC Energy, and they had no comments or concerns with the proposal. So we're recommending approval, Mr. Chairman. Conditions 1 through 10 are standard conditions, and 11, a front setback of 133 feet, 40 meters from the center line of Township Road 194 must always be maintained for structures, trailers, and water tanks on the site. 12, setback relaxation, 5 meters, 16 feet from the side property line is approved. And number 13, setback relaxation is 6 meters, 20 feet from the rear property line is approved. There's an alternate motion, and I also have some photographs of the site. So this is looking east towards Township Road 194. The next photo, we're looking northwest. We're looking east, north, northwest. These photos were taken back in, I believe, January 25th. And then we're looking north again. And then these photos were taken February 1st, 2024. You can see that all of the frac water tanks have been moved 40 meters away from the center line of the road, so visibility is not impacted. Next photo, and it shows the frac water tanks on the west side of the lot, 40 feet or 40 meters from the center line of the Township Road. This shows the west along Township Road 194, and that's probably it for photo. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron. Where is this? Is this the old Olson site? Mr. Chair.
This used to be, what was it called? Jenner Transport back in the day.
I think it is Olson, 25 years ago. Up in the 884 there, past the speed corner there.
Mr. Chairman, this is located way off in the northwest part of the county.
Yeah, towards Jenner. Yeah, okay, good. Mr. Epping, do you have anything to add?
I don't.
I would imagine you've had no input from your neighbor's cows as to this setback restrictions affecting them? Okay. I didn't think so. All right, open the floor discussion. Dan moves it. So Dan moves approval of development application 2408 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The permit will be advertised in Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within 21 days from the date of issue, the development permit will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you can talk to Aaron after today's meeting. Thank you very much. We're, yeah, it's, middle of nowhere. All right, so next, we're a little ahead of schedule now. Action Land, Bullen Construction application. I see Mike's here, but the rest of your party is. Okay, we'll wait for them. We'll just move on to some other business and get back to you. Okay, so now we'll move on to the. We want to start with the yearly permit comparisons. Is somebody doing a presentation, or are we just going to discuss the information presented to us?
Mr. Chairman, Aaron will be presenting the annual permit comparison to the Planning Commission.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be a short presentation. We compiled the data for the last couple of years regarding the number of development permits that we've received and processed. If you look at the graph that's in your package, shops, garages, sheds, and barns have been the main amount of activity, and also obtaining permits for pools, hard surfacing, site coverage, decks is another area where we're getting a lot of permits. There's been over 20 of them, and close to 40 permits for sheds and barns. If we look at the change between 2020 and 2023 in the number of development permits that we received, we can see a change in 2020, an increase in 2021, and that's typical with basically across all the different permit types. And that's most likely due to a COVID-related uptick. I mean, people aren't going to Mexico anymore, so instead of going to Mexico, they're building a shop and getting a permit for that. So we see an uptick in those types of permits. And then with interest rates and cost of materials, just general inflation, I think we're seeing a drop in permits because of that. Also, we had a spike in renewables in 2023. However, the pause on renewables that the provincial government imposed cooled things down a little bit, and in a couple weeks, when that pause is removed, I believe we're going to have a surge in renewable development permit applications for windmills, solar panels, and whatnot. So if there's any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, I can move on to the annual permits report.
Any questions from Planning Commission? There you go.
Just got one on the canceled, withdrawn, or refused. Is that's way up? Is it more of the canceled and withdrawn? Because I don't remember that many refused.
Oh,
I thought we were nicer.
through the chair, the number of canceled, withdrawn, refused, there was a major increase in that because some wind turbines were canceled. I believe it was Wild Rose 2.
Oh, okay.
So that's why there's a major uptick.
Okay.
So in your opinion, they're just standing in the wings waiting, and next month we're going to start seeing a flurry of activity there?
Mr. Chairman, I suspect that we'll see a lot of applications come in. That's just an assumption. I don't know if Kayleen or anyone else has any opinions about that, but I think we'll see an increase.
I think there'll be a bit of a delay because the AUC now is still going to have to make their way through all of the applications that they have underway. We do know that Wild Rose 2 will be pressing ahead. They've already supplied applications, as Aaron has mentioned, but they've since expired since the time that they've applied. So we would anticipate that that would be coming forward right away. And that would be about 50 applications for turbines coming. And then, of course, waiting for the decision of the Utility Commission for the remaining solar and wind projects.
Right, so Wild Rose 2 has passed AUC, it's just, they're just paused and waiting.
Correct.
Okay. Any word on the line curtailment then, or is that still in effect, or is any changes coming to that?
Speak to Wild Rose one more time, though. They have an approved project layout. However, they did submit for a revision to the Utilities Commission. So the Utilities Commission held a hearing back in January to look at the revised layout. So we're awaiting a decision, but the overall project is approved for Wild Rose 2. In terms of the curtailment, we got note that the Alberta Utilities Commission did submit to the minister their findings, and we're waiting to hear back what the outcome is of that report.
Okay. All right.
And if there's no further questions, Mr. Chairman, we'll just require a motion to accept the annual permits for information.
I'll accept such motion. Amanda hasn't done anything yet.
She hasn't done anything. I can make a motion.
Amanda moves approval of the yearly comparison. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so we still got a few more minutes. You need a break? Okay, we're going to break for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
We'll return then. Been here before. You notice there's now a trap door under that seat? Okay, so I'll call the meeting back to order. So the next development application up for discussion is development application 24/11. I would imagine that's Aaron going to be taking us away on that one. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposal is for a Class 1 gravel pit in Ward 7 located in the west half at 33-11-5 west of the 4th. Bullen Construction Limited, the operator, is proposing to complete crushing operations and remediate a natural resource extraction / processing use within the northwest 33-11-5 west of the 4th at the Weber gravel pit site, and we'll refer to that as the North Pit going forward. And this site is zoned Agriculture District 1A1 IDP in the land use bylaw. Once operations in the North Pit have ceased, a new gravel pit, the South Pit, 4 hectares in size, is proposed directly to the south within the southwest 33-11-5 west of the 4th. And that site is zoned Agriculture District 2. The properties are and the municipal authority satisfy the requirements under the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act, the Environmental Protection Guidelines for Pits, the Water Act, the Conservation and Reclamation Regulation, and all statutory or regulatory requirements that may apply. The proposed pit surface disturbance area will be 18 hectares or 45.5 acres in area and require a registration from Alberta Environment. The Code of Practice and Registration application for the remediation of the North Pit and the operations of South Pit was submitted to the province in December 2023, and approval is expected soon. Security for remediation is part of the registration application. The existing North Pit was originally approved by the county as Development Permit 01/51 and was approved by MPC in May 2001. Access to both pits will be through an internal roadway shared with the SMRID. Bullen Construction Limited intends to use the aggregate for development projects in the area. The development of the site will consist of 3 phases. Phase 1 of the project will consist of the completion of operations in Pit North. Phase 2 will start concurrently with the reclamation of the North Pit. Dust and noise mitigation. Section 3.2.6 of the Code of Practice for Pits Registration application addresses methods that will be used to control noise and dust. Mitigating noise and dust will be important for the operation of a site since the country residential subdivision is located 200 meters to the west of the proposed pits. Dust and noise must be mitigated to minimize any negative impacts the pit operations may cause to these residential properties. Mitigation efforts to reduce the amount of dust from operation activities will include the following techniques as necessary. Enclosing crushers to minimize dust levels, maintain and clean equipment regularly, use fine spray or misting system on crushing machinery. Consider the size and type of equipment for the job. Seed and contour stockpiles to reduce wind erosion, reduce traffic speed on roads. Water haul roads during dry periods to reduce airborne dust generated by vehicle movement. And also shutting down operations during periods of high winds when insufficient control measures are in place. Haul trucks, vehicles, machinery, crushers, and generators are the main contributors to noise in gravel pits. To reduce the noise generated from the gravel pit operations, the following mitigation efforts will be implemented. Selection of equipment that has taken noise reduction into account. Preventative maintenance of noise reduction features for all equipment and vehicles. Consideration of equipment location. Minimizing the fall height of material during excavation and processing of the aggregate. Maintenance of on-site roadways to eliminate washboards and ruts. And land use. The landowner has requested that the proposed end land use of the gravel pits will be tame pasture. The subject lands have severe to very severe limitations to crop growth. This is due to the land capacity for agriculture and corresponding land suitability rating. Tame pasture is likely to be successful as a reclamation end use rather than annual agricultural crops. This end use is compatible with surrounding lands, which consist of either native prairie, tame pasture, and some cultivated fields. Section 16.61 of the Land Use Bylaw allows the Development Authority to grant variances if certain conditions are met by the proposed development. That would include not interfering with amenities or materially interfere with the effective use of enjoyment or value of neighboring land, and the proposed development conforms with the use prescribed for that land or building in the Land Use Bylaw. Both the A1 IDP and A2 districts require a setback from the center line of a municipal roadway of 40 meters. The setback requirement would only impact the north pit, which will be remediated as part of this development. The applicant is proposing a 3-meter, 10-foot buffer between any developments and the proposed gravel pit boundaries for the south pit. According to the Land Use Bylaw, side yard setbacks from development and stockpiles should be at least 6.1 meters or 20 feet from the property line. The rear setback of 6.1 meters, 20 feet, will be met for the south pit. The hours of operations are proposed to be Monday to Friday between 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and between 8 and 4 p.m., 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. However, the boundary of a multi-parcel country residential 2 subdivision is located approximately 200 meters directly west of the proposed gravel pit south. Section 12.10.2 of the Land Use Bylaw states that no crushing, processing, washing, or similar use can occur within 300 meters of the boundary of a multi-parcel subdivision. Section 12.10.3 states that the Development Authority may only consider a variance or waiver of Section 12.10.2 provided that no crushing, processing, washing, or similar is occurring within the 300-meter, 984-foot requirement. Extraction and reclamation activities within the 300 meters requirement may only occur between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. The applicant order provides appropriate measures to the satisfaction of the Development Authority to mitigate any nuisance or potential nuisance from the pit area. And lastly, the Development Authority is satisfied that extraction and reclamation activities occur expeditiously and in a manner that poses minimum effect to residents within the multi-parcel residential subdivision. Despite the application receiving letters of support from adjacent property owners, the use of the word shall in section 12.10.2 of the Land Use Bylaw would seem to be mandatory. The north pit is scheduled to be reclaimed within the next 2 years, and the south pit will be in operation between 5 to 10 years. Approximately 36,000 tons, 101,940 cubic square meters of material will be extracted and processed during the lifespan of the pit. Access to the gravel pit is proposed to be from Township Road 120. Conditions of approval will impose mitigation measures relating to noise and dust nuisances that may be generated from the pit operations, a road use agreement with the Public Works Department, and a traffic impact assessment will also be conditions of approval. Relevant legislation under the MGA, an excavation or stockpile is considered a development. That's section 683, Municipal Development Plan has a section on resource extraction and renewable energy. And the proposal does appear to be aligned with the Municipal Development Plan. Land Use Bylaw, as I mentioned previously, there's a setback variance required for the minimum side and rear yards. The proposed side yard setback is 3 meters, 10 feet, and the rear setback is proposed to be 20 feet. And also, based on the review of the Land Use Bylaw, the proposed hours of operation do not meet the requirements of 12.10.3 of the Land Use Bylaw. The Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan, the north portion of the development site is within the The north pit is scheduled to be remediated within 2 years and will continue to be aligned with the IDP. The north pit is more than 800 meters away from the city and didn't need to be referred. Township Road 120 ASP. From looking at that ASP, there does appear to be future realignment of the Trans-Canada Highway intersecting through this site. And the Highway 1 realignment is a very, very long-range project. This was also circulated to Alberta Transportation, and I'll get to that in a second. Cypress County design guidelines, basically, the developer would need to enter into a road use agreement, which is addressed. Under referrals, we referred the application to Public Works, and Public Works is saying they need a traffic impact assessment done for Township Road 120 and to ensure that the movement of gravel trucks and semis work for turning movements. Alberta Transportation needs a roadside development application for the proposed development, and I've provided a link for the applicant to apply for that. The St. Mary's River Irrigation District has no comments or concerns. Apex Utilities, they have no objections with the proposed development. However, the applicant should arrange for field locating prior to excavations. The recommended motion is to approve DP 24/11. The first conditions 1 through 7 are standard conditions. Condition number 8, reclamation of the site is to be completed within 1 year from the expiration of the gravel pit in accordance with the Code of Practice for Pits. Condition 9, the operator shall comply with all requirements of Alberta Environment, including a guide to the Code of Practice for Pits and the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act, the Water Act, and Environmental Protection Guidelines for Pits. The operator shall ensure compliance with the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act guidelines regarding dust and air quality and will implement the dust control measures as per the submitted activities plan to limit adverse impacts to adjacent landowners and the traveling public. Condition 11, the regular hours of operation are approved as Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. No operations may be undertaken on weekends. Condition 12, no crushing, processing, or washing or similar activities may occur within 300 meters of the multi-parcel subdivision located to the west of the subject site. Condition 13, a setback relation of 3.1 meters, 10 feet from the side property line for the south pit is approved. Number 14, all pit excavations, stripping, stockpiles, and equipment must meet the minimum setback requirements of 40 meters from the center line of Township Road 120. Lands which have been disturbed or are located within the minimum setback are to be returned to their pre-disturbed land use within 1 year of the date of decision of the development permit. Number 15, the applicant is responsible to obtain a copy of necessary approvals from Alberta Transportation prior to commencement. A copy of the approval is to be submitted to Cypress County. Condition 16, the operator shall implement the dust and noise control measures as per the submitted pit registration application. Condition number 17, the operator is required to enter into a road use agreement with Cypress County and be in compliance with the terms of the agreement as it relates to the project to protect the county's road infrastructure. As a requirement of the road use agreement, the operator will be required to provide an appropriate performance bond to ensure that the terms of the agreement are satisfied, including responsibility for all maintenance and repairs to county roads as a result of operating the gravel pit. Number 18, developer is to provide a traffic impact assessment prepared by a qualified engineer to review and recommend treatments to improve turning radius and movements for the intersection of Township Road 120. The TIA is required to be submitted to Cypress County for review prior to the commencement of the project. Condition 19, the developer is required to enter into a municipal service agreement with Cypress County and be in compliance with the terms of the agreement for any required improvements identified by the TIA. And condition 20, the permit is subject to annual review. As part of this process, the operator is required to provide Cypress County with a verification of current remediation, extraction, processing, and stockpiling areas. And I think I have some photos. So I went out there and took some photos. This is the north pit looking towards Township Road 120. And that's the entrance to the gravel pit that I'm parked in. I'm looking south from the entrance to the gravel pit. And then the next photo, we're looking east. This is north pit again. Looking northeast from the north pit. And looking north towards Township Road 120. And looking southwest from the north pit. You can see residences off in the distance. And looking south from the north pit. Then we're looking east from Township Road 120. And there's some piles that appear to be within 40 meters of the center line. However, the site's going to be remediated, and hopefully that will be removed within the next year or so. And we're at the south pit, and we're looking east. South pit again, looking north. Looking southwest. And then looking west, and you can see houses, country residential subdivision off in the distance. And that concludes the pictures and my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. You guys want to just introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are and then speak to your application at that time?
Sorry. My name's Mike Bullen. I own that piece of land to the south where the second pit would go, and I'm the owner of Bullen Construction Co., so I'd be the operator of the pit as well.
And Jason Tweeten, President of Ashland Environmental, representing Bolin Construction on the application, also the application to the government, and any other permits required.
And self-explanatory, the information you presented to us, anything else to add, or?
Unless there's questions, we'd just like to go over a couple of the conditions, if possible.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we just made some notes. Obviously, 1 through 7, like you identified, are common and standard. Just a couple clarifications in regards to 8, 9, and 10. Mostly the requirement for having it in the DP when it's already going to be within existing guides and approvals required from the county, not understanding exactly why the county feels they need to remind the applicant of his requirements, but it's just a general question. I mean, the Alberta government is the one that gives us the approval and requires us to maintain the Protection Enhancement Act rules. So just not sure why it's an overlap on this permit, 9 and 10, well, and even 8, because yeah, we do have to meet the code of practices. So just kind of a question in regards to why the county's adding that in instead of all the other types of approvals that a gravel pit requires.
Sir?
Sorry, Wade, that was a question.
Okay, is that it for your discussion?
Oh, no, that's just 8, 9, and 10.
Okay.
Do you want to address each question individually, or do you want me just to go through them all? There's several.
We'll go through them all and then we can address it.
Sure. So 8, 9, 10, question there. Number 11, as identified, the Commission does have 12.10.3 as a variance waiver allowed to discuss times. It doesn't identify in 12.10.3 about crushing, so we would ask for a variance, if possible, to allow for crushing on Saturdays. The 8 to 5 time is all right. We would just ask for that. If the applicant is allowed to crush 1 extra day of the week, obviously then that would allow him to get done crushing quicker, which would be less of an impact for the general public, which is typically the concern. So it's basically add 1 more day, 20% shorter time period than it would take for us to be out there, or not, and it takes us 20% longer to be in the area. So that's going to be on number 11. Number 12, we have definitely some discussions we'd like to talk about in regards to the setback. I might leave that to the end if okay with everybody. We come back to number 16, just questioning if this is not the same as number 10, and then if so, same questions apply. I'll let Mike speak to the fees in number 17 when I'm done. Number 18, questioning the requirement for the TIA on Township 120, which has the existing pit already active. Not sure what requirement there would be to have a TIA completed now when that is already an active approach for an active site. This site's not going to increase traffic. It's already there. So questioning the requirement there. And then 18 goes with 19. And then just some clarification on earlier discussion in regards to Bowling's plans, just so the committee knows. It's not, we don't want to have this application contingent on a future application of a potential south pit. That may be in front of the commission soon enough, but it talks about how earlier on that in the background that one would start after the other one. That necessarily might not be the case. Some of the operations might not, might actually be operating at the same time. So if we could, we would just like to obviously just discuss the application at hand and not tie the existing approval for the quote-unquote north pit and potential future application for a south pit, if at all possible, because it does tie that in on the background. So I just wanted to separate it and just focus on this application. Mike, do you quickly want to just make the comment on the rates on 17 before the commission?
Yeah, sure.
comes back?
The road use agreement, I mean, for years now, there has been in play a levy that we've been attached to every ton of gravel that's hauled out. And I basically was under the understanding that that does go into the roads and keeping stuff in a line for that. So another road use agreement, I'm not sure how it would put into play, how much coverage is needed for something like that. It just seems like that's another levy on top of what was already put in years ago.
So, okay, continue on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, thanks. That's the end of our questions and comments.
Okay, so just to be clear, you're opposed to this application proposal with conditions as they are presented? Is this a live or die thing, or is this
Well, that's the
discussion?
way we'd like to discuss each one. Do we have flexibility? Sure. This council has always been somewhat flexible and negotiable in some ways. Give one, take one, maybe some things like that. Some things are obviously more dramatic and impactful to our operations than others. So, yeah, let's have a conversation if possible.
Okay, so does the development officer want to speak to these issues and why those recommendations are in place?
Mr. Chairman, conditions 8, 9, and 10 are typical conditions that we put in all gravel pit applications. I believe the intent would be to reiterate what the code of practice application, what the code of practice would require. Conditions number 11 and 12 regarding the hours of operation and the separation distance between the crushing and the residential. If MPC feels comfortable, they can grant a variance if they so wish. However, the report does indicate that there's sections of the land use bylaw that seems to make it mandatory that the separation distance, the times of operation rules should be followed. Let's see.
Just hold one second there,
Yep.
Aaron. Kaylee, do you have something to add into here?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on condition number 11 pertaining to hours of operation, and Jason will probably recall to a previous application that Action was privy to, and that was for MJB Enterprises. What we did in that application is that if there was a temporary hours of operation that was needed, they came in to apply on a case-by-case basis, and then whoever was impacted was able to appeal that decision. We know that the pit will likely be in operation up to at least 10-year period. And if in the event that there are concerns from the adjacent country residential subdivision, we can't go back and change the conditions. So we would reiterate to the Planning Commission that the hours of operation should stay as is, with the ability that they can reapply for a temporary extension.
Thank you for the clarification. Go on, Aaron. Dan, do you have something to ask?
I was just going to clarify that because we did that on that last gravel pit, that the crushing was a separate permit altogether.
Right.
So they could run 24-hour a day
We did,
if it was applicable for that and get in and get done and get it over with.
Yeah, if I may, Chairman, that's what I
ahead.
was about to say. I'd like to separate the word operations from crushing. They're two different things. I would actually, we would actually like to leave 11 as is and add possibly another condition or an amendment. We would like an amendment to 12 for a couple different things and have different hours for crushing only, not operations. You're right, 10 to 12 years is the lifespan. We're not asking to work Saturdays for 10 to 12 years. We're just looking to extend the crushing period an extra 20% to conclude the crushing, which is typically about 60 to 90 days depending on weather and depending on material.
So on that note, that's what we did on the last one, was a separate permit altogether
For crushing, yeah.
for crushing. So we could change that and just make it, you apply for the separate permit for crushing.
Correct, and we'd be all right with that. Just the way it's written right now, Dan, sorry, is that that's not an option, so, yeah.
No, that would be consistent with the previous ones, correct?
Okay, so would that be adding condition 21, crushing will be a separate application?
Or change 12.
Or change 12 to state,
Crushing permit altogether to be applied at a separate time.
Times of crushing. Because so, there's one more pink elephant in the room here that we have to address. It's the setback that's not identified in 12 and in 12.10.2 and 12.10.3. So we could maybe give our position first on the setback, or?
okay, let's just deal with this first. Aaron, are you square with setting up and amending that condition?
Mr. Chairman, if that is consistent with previous applications, then I would be supportive of that.
Okay. So can you amend the wording to that so that when we do get a motion, we can have that new wording inserted?
A separate DP would be required for crushing activities.
Okay.
Yeah, Aaron, I'm not sure it's a development permit. I think it might just be a permit, but yeah.
Permit.
Yeah. I just don't want to have to come and bother the commission for their valuable time.
It
Okay,
was
so
set
now,
up, it was set up for a permit so that staff could deal with it without them coming in here.
right. Okay, so we'll step back to this after we finish Aaron's input into the rest of the concerns originally raised, and then we'll go back to additional concerns. All right, go ahead, Aaron.
Okay. Okay, so
16.
condition number 15 is required. Alberta Transportation will want their permits. 16, we're reiterating what the submission is stating. And regarding the road use agreement, that's a standard condition when you have heavy road traffic using county roadways. You want to make sure that the trucks and stuff will not damage our infrastructure. So that would be something that's typical, and it's also something that Public Works specifically requested. And the TIA is something that Public Works also requested. That's condition 18. And with trucks moving on and off of Township Road 120, it would be a good idea to ensure that there's a traffic analysis done to ensure that there's no impacts with existing traffic or future traffic on that roadway. I think.
Okay, so Kayleen, go ahead if you have something.
Yeah, I have a comment in regards to the traffic impact assessment. So one of the things that we need to look at as well is to make sure that the current approach meets the standards of Cypress County that are current, right? We know that the original pit was approved in 2001. Standards have changed since that time. It's also consistent with the application on the north side of Township Road 120 when ACON did their expansion. They had to supply the county with a traffic impact assessment, and then there was an intersection improvement that was needed at that time as well. Just some background as to why we're recommending that condition be placed.
Okay. All right, go on, Aaron.
Municipal service agreement, if there's any changes recommended in the TIA.
I think 17 was the one. Section
So
17 was the
is
next
the one that we were
concern?
discussing, and then the TIA.
Okay.
Number 18 we've discussed, and number 19, the municipal service agreement requirement. If there's any changes recommended by the TIA, you'd need a service agreement to ensure that those changes are, improvements are made to Cypress County requirements. And number 20, subject to annual review, we just want to make sure, monitor the use to ensure that the conditions are being met. And this is a standard condition on most of the gravel pits that I've looked at. And we basically need information every year regarding the status of the remediation, extraction, processing, and stockpiling areas. So that's fairly standard, Mr. Chairman. So I think that's all the conditions.
Okay, so now let's go back to your additional concern.
Okay, which one do you want us to come back to?
You were saying you had,
Or do you want to talk about the TI and the road use?
well, you had indicated to us, we went through 8 through 9, 11, 12, 16,
Okay, sorry,
17,
8, so thank you, Aaron, for your explanation on 8, 9, 10. Totally understandable, and we'll concede on that one. My other one was actually 16, not 15. 13, 14, 15 we're fine with. 16 was just a comment that it's basically the same as 10 and didn't believe it was required, but again, the explanation is still valid, so we're fine with that one. We do want to talk about, well, now that we've talked about the hours of operation for the crushing, number 11 will be fine. We do want to talk about 12 though. 17, we're gonna maybe push back a bit on this one. This says Township Road 120. I think we're all quite aware of the traffic that's on Township 120. So I'm not sure if Public Works is in attendance today or not, but I think there's more agriculture loaded Super Bs that drive down that road than any gravel trucks anytime soon. And we all are well aware that they're not entering into any road use agreement to ensure that that road is kept up. So it's just a comment that maybe that this standard requirement for road use should be maybe looked at differently when we're coming off such a public road like Township 120. It's a highway, it's paved, there's a lot of traffic. To try to then put emphasis on one user of that and have them pay not the same as other users would make somebody start thinking that there's maybe more to this. That is when we do the TIA, if that's approved, you'll see the impact of that highway. It'll be interesting to see how much impact there is for agriculture use and public use as compared to industry use. I think we're quite aware with what that will be. So then to try to put that back on industry as they use and wants to develop within the area, and it seems to be maybe a bit negative towards industry.
As well on that, like I said, with the gravel pit levy that's been placed on them, that's my understanding is what it's for. It's to monitor highways, take care of that sort of thing. So we're basically already paying for that with every ton of gravel hauled, as is every gravel pit around. So it basically covers that standard already.
We definitely can get behind using range roads or township roads that don't have the level of impact that Township Road 120 has from the current structure and layout of the area to utilize that as a bypass road. Once the county has entered into that, they would have already taken on the consideration of such high impact traffic. So now to try to impact one user only seems maybe a bit extreme. So we'd like Public Works to maybe rethink that or look back on that one and try to give us some more reasoning as to why this road specifically would need that with all the other users. And it would bode still with the TIA, like Kayleen indicated, that there was just one done. So that information is on hand. Not sure how that would change having another one done. Again, this pit has been approved for the last 23 years and the county has not had a problem until now. Not sure what has sprung that on. This application isn't going to cause any more or any less traffic, so not sure why all of a sudden 18 and 19 is required in this one.
One quick clarification. Is the Weber pit going to still be used, or is that being abandoned?
It's going to depend on operations, on how they're both used in conjunction, but there will still be continued use on the north pit while this pit is in operation, either reclamation and or operations itself.
Okay, thank you.
Again, no additional impact of traffic.
Yeah, we've actually already started some sort of reclaim on the Weber pit side. So that pit is shrinking as we're working on the other one.
Okay. All right, Michelle, do you have a question right now?
I just need some clarification. You guys are talking about getting a TIA on the 120, but doesn't this say that it's the reason you're getting it is for the intersection going in there? It's not really on the 120?
I think there's a couple different conversations that are ongoing because we're kind of talking about condition number 17, condition number 18, and then we're also kind of talking a little bit of the cap levy, I think, as well, is in there. So condition number 17 talks about the requirement for a road use agreement. So just for information, the road use agreement requirements are established by the road protection bylaw, which is a bylaw that's established by council, and it's up to council to input the requirements for road use into that bylaw. So for the Planning Commission to make a decision on something under the road protection bylaw wouldn't be in their purview. So what has to happen is there would be a condition for the road protection, road use agreement, and that would be taken back to Public Works, and the developer alongside with Public Works would look at the haul routes, you would look at the details of the security, and all of those details will be worked out outside of today's MPC meeting in accordance with the road protection bylaw. So MPC can't speak to that. In regards to the traffic impact, I think Kim might have had a comment that he wanted to add in.
Yeah, thank you. So that, through the chair. So that the first pit was opened in 2001, I believe, and since then the traffic has went. At that time it was like 800 vehicles a day, and now we're close to 3,600 vehicles a day, and that would be consistent with all applications on the 120. We've required a TIA for. Doesn't matter if it's the co-op or any business or John Deere or any gravel operations to this magnitude. And I do have one other comment. This application isn't, it's hard to compare this application with previous applications, saying that it's consistent with previous applications as DP 2411 is within 300-meter setback of residents regarding the hours of operation, where the other ones were not.
Okay. Yeah, so just for clarification for Planning Commission, we've requested TIAs for every development the last how many years on the 120? I mean, I remember the Deere dealership intersection, Ag Plus, Co-op,
Even the church.
the church. We've had that church. They had to do one as well. So are there any that don't have to do a TIA? Any additional commercial type activities on the 120?
And to clarify, that's true for any new approach required for a new application. We do not need a new approach. Project is existing, and like Kim identified, there is an approval that was in since 2001. So absolutely, every new application off of the 120 needs a TIA for a new approach. We're not asking for a new approach. We already have an approach. We already utilized the approach, and we have since 2001. We're not asking to increase the traffic for our operations. We're just simply asking to have our operation extend further south. The same truck that comes to North Plant is just going to go south now. So I recognize that all new applications for a new approach coming off the 120 require TIA. But just to be clear, that's not what we're looking at here.
Any amendments? I think when we did the, for example, a co-op in addition to Ag Plus, we had to do another TIA for that, correct? So, and that's why I asked the question earlier, is this replacing the Weber pit or is it in addition to Weber pit? I think that kind of speaks to
In
that.
conjunction, right. And that's a great example. Once you've added the co-op on top of the additional traffic that Ag Plus has, you're adding additional traffic. Mike's not looking at doubling down his size of operation there. He's simply looking at extending his operation further to the south. He doesn't have enough room on the Weber pit to do that, so he's looking at extending it and creating a new pit, this pit. So it's not like a whole nother companies coming in, such as the Ag Plus and the Co-op type scenario. It's the same company. It's the same operator. We're not looking at LMT or Acon or a third-party developer coming in. It's still Bolin Construction.
Okay. Dan, go ahead.
Okay, I understand what you're saying there, but you also told us earlier in your statements that you wanted us to separate the uses of these. So that makes it two different businesses that you coming into that access. So you get it one way or the other. So if we're separating it the way you want, the TIA and everything comes in. If you want to go back to using it as one, then it works out as one, but then you're hitting that, probably going to be too close to it for your hectares and that, and you need to have these separated. That's why you want to do two separate ones, correct?
No, the only reason we want to separate because of the earlier background conditions in regards to the timing of reclamation. We're just not going to be able to walk away with the commission feeling that we are going to reclaim in the manner that was outlined in the background. That's not the case. Reclamation will be done, as Mike indicated, on the north pit, it's already getting done, but we're not going to wait for it to be completed prior to utilizing the south pit. That was the only reason. We can throw it back together, absolutely. Put it back together as one. Just make that slight adjustment so everybody leaves with the same understanding that one won't wait for complete reclamation before the other starts. I don't want that to be misunderstood.
Unfortunately, the new TAs are on every business, whether it's new or old or anything. Any expansion, anything that happens on the 120 is a TA involved. But, so what's your road access to that new one? Do you have to go through that quarter? Do you have an access agreement or you own both quarters or what's
I have a caveat in place with Mr. Weber, and then the next piece is mine, so, yeah. And
so there is a
shared that-
caveat to go through?
There is, and SMRID is on there as well. We all use the same road.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Have we covered all your? No? Okay,
No,
keep
we haven't
on,
set
keep
back.
on keeping on. Let's go.
Okay, I got maps to hand out.
It's gonna be a lot better than the map that's shown. Oh, I have not. I didn't know how to work with the team today. This is the setback discussion. We're gonna have to discuss this, hopefully.
We gotta get our maintenance crew in because that button isn't working over there.
It isn't? I can speak a little louder if you want.
No, he's talking about the trap door.
I'm talking about the trap door button, that's all.
Get your mom and dad a chair. Can you two boss a chair? These ladies probably are needed.
We can share.
So, this, and then I only have one of the overall story. Maybe if you want to take a copy of the overall. So I guess at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the
Oh, I thought that's what you said. Oh. Oh. All right, fair enough. I'll take that as a pause. So, I mean, basically, as you can see in the overview map I just handed out, that the existing Weber plant, as identified and approved in 2001, has clearly been in operation since then, and future development and approvals from the county have been accepted to be within the 300-meter radius. So, if we're looking at past precedences, I don't believe that this variance request is outside of the realms of this committee, and I don't believe it's outside of the realms of the intention of 12.10-2 or -3. I'll stop now.
You're arguing in agreement with the condition that's already presented?
Not arguing.
The setbacks relaxation?
No, not arguing. We're simply asking for 12 to be changed to the boundary of the nearest residence, not to the nearest subdivision property line. The residence. We feel that the intention of 12.10 is to keep industry away from houses, not from boundaries of property lines. If and when there's a house that is on that boundary, or if with another one that's added onto that subdivision, we would cease all operations.
So our purview is to give relaxation if it's deemed appropriate, but not to change the bylaw?
Relaxation of the bylaw.
Correct.
That's right. You're
But
allowed
we can't say we're going to contradict the bylaw, we'll give a relaxation of the bylaw.
Sure, yes, we're looking for a relaxation.
Which is what presented.
Yeah, fair enough. Correct wording. A relaxation of the bylaw is what we're looking for, with the understanding of the most likely the intention of the bylaw was to keep industry away from houses and not industry away from boundaries of property. Just trying to emphasize there's a huge difference there.
Go ahead, Kayleen.
So I understand the rationale, and I understand what Jason is saying, but my mind goes back to the requirements within the Municipal Government Act. The way that the MGA reads is that the Development Authority shall assess the application as outlined with the following criteria: unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with the effect, the use, the enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land. It talks about parcels. So we can't measure if somebody living in a residence is going to be more impacted than somebody that is utilizing a swimming pool in a backyard, as an example. How do you measure that? And so that's why we say within the bylaw the boundary of a multi-parcel, because people might weigh that differently. The MGA talks about neighboring parcels, not neighboring residences.
Just to be clear, the MGA also refers to the AER and the AUC in regards to this also, and both of them measure from the house.
We just have to be careful here. We're adjusting through the chair, and you're not talking directly to staff, please. Thank you. Okay, are you done? Okay, go on.
Okay, I was just basically going to say, in regards to that comment, the MGA also identifies the utilization of the requirements of Alberta, including the AUC and the AER, which do identify residences at the point of the house, not the boundary lines. So the MGA does have written in certain situations what Kayleen's talking about, but then also refers to it in other places where that it would defer back to the current regulations. And also the same as with the government approval for gravel pits, it's from the residences. It's not from boundary lines.
Okay, well, there's two things we're not going to do here today. Is we're not going to change the MGA, and we're not going to change the land use bylaw. So we can talk about the relaxation and go on from that perspective. I mean, your points are valid, and your points are being heard by council and planning commission. So I think we can safely move on. Say we're addressing the relaxation within this permit in the conditions. So I don't know where we go from here, because we can only address this particular application.
Yeah, no, understandable. I was just talking back to in regards to the potential ruling based on the MGA discussion on current setbacks.
So what do we need for a setback on this to make this work?
There's a setback relaxation
but there
As a
isn't.
condition, correct?
No, sorry, to be clear, number 13 identifies the setback requirement because of the side property to the east. The development officer has suggested that the commission approves the relaxation of 10 feet to allow for the pit to be within the property line on the east side. I believe that's correct, right? Right, Aaron?
Setback
Yeah.
relaxation, from the side property line.
So that makes it work.
Yeah, it works, right?
That makes,
Just to be clear, there's two different setbacks were required. So the current setbacks requirements are that you're not allowed to have a gravel pit adjoining or on top of a current boundary with, there's supposed to be a 10-foot separation. And as you can see on the map, the plan for this is to be right along the quarter line to the east. So we're asking for the 10-foot relaxation to allow for the current layout. The setback for the residents is number 12.
now you've got me confused.
So 13, condition 13,
12 and 13 are different. The way the pit's structured right now is that the east boundary is right along the border.
so which additional setback do we need?
So we need we need one setback, which is the east boundary, to be set back from the east boundary of the quarter line, 10 feet, which is number 13, so that it can be allowed. And then number 12, we're asking for relaxation for the crushing aspect to allow for Mike to actually set up his crushing on his plant without the current restriction of basically half the area as you see.
Okay, Aaron, where are you taking this from yeah, I agree this is not direct setback, number 13 says setbacks relaxation from the side property line for the south pit. Do you see any other setback that we need included in this?
Mr. Chairman, the setback mentioned in number 13 is for the east setback from the side of the pit to the quarter section line. And the other setback relaxation, I guess, would be the setback from the pit to the boundary of the country residential subdivision to the west. And land use bylaw says it should be 300 meters, and what's proposed is about 205 meters. So
we need to add a condition in there for setback, another setback, or do you think we can amend 12?
what we've done is we've included the hours of operation as if it was due to the fact that it's within 300 meters of the neighboring country residential lot. So that section of the land use bylaw says if you're closer than 300 meters, then these are the hours of operation and crushing that you can do, and we basically put that in the conditions.
So we don't have to have a setback relaxation included because you're
Because the
adjusting
times we're using meet the land use bylaw, hours of operation.
Okay, so then when they come in for the crushing that he's talking about, that's when we'll do a setback on that too for the permit for the crushing at a later date.
At a later date, that's right.
So, and they'll still be covered on everything that we're discussing here.
Right. So, I mean, if, through the chair, if the applicant wishes to have the hours of operation altered or the crushing altered, I'm thinking that under section 640 of the MJ that allows variances to be granting, MPC could, if they believe that the test outlined in section 640 or the section 16.61 of the land use bylaws met, and that would be that the proposed development doesn't unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood, materially interfere with the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land, and the use conforms with the prescribed use in the land use bylaw. So if MPC feels that it's not changing the hours of operation will not negatively impact adjacent properties, I think section 640 might give you the ability to do that. However, the land use bylaw is quite clear with the word shall. To me, it sounds mandatory.
Do we need a postponement to flesh this out better? Is this a hill to live or die on that we need to get squared away, in your opinion?
Well, so the current application for the government is or the application is currently within the government. We have not received final approval. That will obviously hinder the time that we can move forward also. But if we could have assurance to have this reheard in the next MPC meeting, it probably wouldn't negatively impact our timeline. We're not looking at crushing until the summer of 2024. We've already, as you can see, stockpiled some material on site. I don't believe we need to do any more work there until crushing. So if we could get insurance that we could have a time slot in March.
Okay, so you've raised a number of points that I think we need to flesh out and address. Does staff feel that postponement would fulfill that? Or are we at the point where we can make a decision right now and it's not going to go to appeal?
I think we've addressed everything that they've asked.
Could we possibly make one small adjustment or suggestion? Sorry. Could we possibly remove 12 and all crushing discussions inside of this permit? And as indicated earlier, we will come back for a separate permit in regards to crushing hours of operation and location and deal with it then?
I was just going to say. Because it is a
So
separate,
remove
that's what
12?
I was going to say.
Staff,
Take that
what
right
is,
out.
Aaron, what is your opinion on removal of 12?
We could remove 12, but we'd need a separate application to approve crushing.
And the applicant's fine with that? We'll remove that portion and then the crushing activities will be addressed through the permitting process on the next permit to crush.
We need to put that in. We need to say that.
So we should not remove 12, we should amend 12 to state that.
I thought that's what we were doing, was changing 12 to say something along the lines that they have to come back for a crushing permit.
Right. Go ahead, Caitlin.
Mr. Chairman, condition number 12 has to stay within the permit because the only way that they can have their gravel pit operations within 300 meters of the subdivision is to have the provision for no crushing within that boundary distance. So what I might recommend is rather than a postponement, can we take a 5-minute recess? Staff will go over the conditions and we'll come back to the Planning Commission with a revised recommendation.
Commission agreement with that overall? Okay, all right, please do. Want to present the amended recommendations or conditions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Condition number 12 will be amended to the existing text plus adding the operator may reapply for a temporary permit for crushing. So we'd add that to condition number 12. Then for condition number 13, we would add east before the word side property. The word side property.
Okay. That clarifies it. Okay. Any more discussion? Motions?
I'm too confused over it to know.
Do you need more clarification?
No, I think I got it.
Okay, we need to
This
make
makes
a,
sense to me.
we want to make a decision here that everybody's clear on. So if anybody has any questions,
No, they
don't feel any.
clarified my question,
Okay.
or my confusion, I should say.
Okay. If in doubt, vote no. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All right.
I'll make the motion with the changes to 12 and 13.
That's it? Okay, so Dan moves approval of development permit 24/11 with amendments to conditions 12 and 13 as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within 21 days, the permit will become valid at that time. If you have any questions, please talk to Aaron after the meeting. Thank you, gentlemen. So we have one outstanding condition, point on the agenda, the planner's report. Any discussion, questions, or concerns regarding that? Go ahead, Kayleen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The planner's report is presented for information. Notable coming out of that planner's report for this month is that there is a scheduled appeal hearing for Wholesome Equine, 10 a.m. on Thursday, February 22nd. So Becky will represent the decision at that meeting. And other than that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. And Mr. Chairman, we also have the annual review permits to review after planner's report as well, just so that you're aware that that's on the agenda.
Okay, so, good. Planner's report. Amanda moves approval of planner's report as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to the annual review permits. Yeah, we've got a few knocked off of there, I see.
Mr. Chairman, we've removed 6 permits from the list.
Yeah.
We went through our computer system, and there's been no complaints regarding any of these permits, except for one in 7 persons, and that one's been followed up on. We're monitoring that one. So basically, the permits highlighted in yellow that you see on the screen are the ones that'll be removed, and the rest of them can stay on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yep. For each removal? Okay, all right. Question? Go ahead, Dan.
So there hasn't been any issues. For how long? Is it just 1 year, or has it been several years?
Through the chair, from looking at my records, there has been no complaints, well, in our computer system. No recent complaints. The last complaint was probably, if I remember correctly, 2018, 2019. So we haven't had anybody call in and have anything recorded in our computer system, except for one site and 7 persons.
Okay. Okay.
Any other discussion?
I'll make the motion for 1708.
Okay, so permits, I'm going to go through each individual one by number. Okay, so you're going to move removal of 2112? That's the, oh, sorry, 1708?
Yeah.
Dan moves approval of removal of 1708. All those in favor? Carried.
I'll move
Michelle moves approval of removal of 21/12. All those in favor? Carried. Lloyd moves approval of removal. Lloyd moves approval of the removal. Yeah, that's right. Of 21/22. All those in favor? Carried. Nigel moves approval of removal of 21/17. All those in favor? 22/17, that's not corrected. All those in favor? Carried. Amanda, you want to do one? Yes, I can. Amanda moves approval of removal of 22/144. All those in favor? Carried. Last one, Dan moves approval of removal of 22/155. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and do we need a motion to approve the permit presentation, or is the individual removal as sufficient?
Individual motions are sufficient. Thank you.
Okay, next meeting, Tuesday, March 12th. Adjourn the meeting.